And now we can officially begin. So once again, my name is Mike. I'm with Metro MBA. Metro MBA is a great directory resource site for folks who are researching all things graduate management education. That is a term that if you are not familiar with, all it essentially means is any degree in business beyond the bachelor's level, right? So we're talking about master's level programs, even doctorate level programs, and all of that is graduate management education. And some of the things that we do on our site is we allow folks to research different programs, different program types. And a lot of the big questions about program types usually surround, what am I eligible for? What types of programs should I be looking into? What options are open to me based on my work experience background, or maybe my educational background? And that's really where the idea for today's session really came from, is how can we help explain to folks who are researching different program types how to really choose between those options and what's going to be the best option for you. So with that, I want to introduce our guest today, or our co-host today, Sri Ramakrishnan over from I want to make sure I get it right, Whitman School of Management at Syracuse University. Sri, I will kick it over to you and take it from here.
Thanks, Mikey. Hello, everyone. It's good to see some familiar names in the attendee list. I know we've been interacting via email, and thank you for coming on to this session today. And I hope it will be useful for you and answer some questions as you're navigating the application. And for those of you whom I haven't had a chance to interact with yet via email, welcome. I'm happy to meet you here, and I hope we can continue the conversation later on. So as Mike explained, this will be like an initial PowerPoint that I prepared for all of you, just to go over some main points to help differentiate the two degrees, because usually there's a lot of questions coming from candidates about how they can apply for the MBA, or they want to apply for the MBA, but they're really not eligible at the stage when they initially contact us. And so I want to make sure we open up the opportunities in helping you understand the differences between the two degree programs, which might differ from university to university and also as per different regions. So with that being said, next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to start off with this slide because I think usually a lot of students who I interact with are international students or some domestic students who've never been to a cold location. So Syracuse is known for being a very cold place, and we love the snow, as you can see. And so one of the questions that usually comes up is, will I be able to handle the cold if I'm not from a cold place? Yeah, well, you see the students sitting inside the building, enjoying the lovely cold weather view, but essentially very comfortable because he is in a climate controlled environment. And that's how the buildings are. They're all climate controlled. But of course, when you go outside, you will be protected in layers, as you can see the layers that he has on the couch over there. So I thought this was a nice picture. And you're also looking at the building that is in focus is one of the iconic buildings at Syracuse University called the Hall of Languages. It's a beautiful campus, and I'm not just saying that because I work here at Syracuse, but overall it's just the architecture is gorgeous. It's a beautiful campus. Sometimes it's just nice on a nice crisp fall day to just grab a cup of coffee or hot chocolate and just walk, and take in the environment. So next slide, please. Okay, so we'll start. Here's where the meat is beginning, right? To understand what are business school program offerings. Typically, there are two main degrees offered. I'm not covering the doctoral degree in this session, okay? At Syracuse, at the Whitman School of Management, that's handled through the dean's office. And so I'm not going to address doctoral degrees in this presentation, but specifically the two main degrees that would be offered would be the MBA degree and the specialized master's programs, which is the MS degree. So you could have both of these program options in different modalities, right? So in different formats. They could be offered full-time, they could be part-time or online, they could be a hybrid, they could be weekend only. So it really depends on where you are looking in terms of the university that you're looking at, and also the region that you're looking at. Are you looking at the US? Are you looking in Europe? Are you looking in, Asia Pacific region? So depending on where you're looking, the types of programs offered would vary. And sometimes schools will offer more than one program format, right? So for instance, the MBA program at Whitman is offered in the full-time on-campus in residence option, as well as via an online option. But I specifically represent the full-time program options for the MBA as well as the specialized master's program. So that's what I will focus on as we go later on in the slides. But the MS programs, lately, you might have seen that they are all, you're noticing a terminology associated, which is called STEM designated, which basically stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So that just helps you understand for international students that the programs are STEM designated. There are certain opportunities for extending your practical training component. If there are specific questions, I can address them towards the end of the presentation. But most importantly, what you need to understand from a STEM designated component of the program is that it is going to be heavily quantitative. So you want to be able to demonstrate your quantitative competency when you are submitting your application. Right? Duration of the programs will vary depending on the degree and the format. Like I said, it could be a 2-year program that's offered full-time. It could be a 2-year program that's offered online, either in a semester system or a quarter system. It could be our MS degree programs, for instance, are flexible pathways, and I'll talk more about that when we discuss the MS program separately. So it really depends on where you're looking for programs. So don't assume that you looked at the programs on one website at one university, and that's the same that's going to be the case at every other location. So be careful to watch out for nuances. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's a general difference between the MBA and the MS degrees. Again, I'm still talking in general. I haven't specifically come to what we offer at Whitman. Okay, so generally speaking, the Master's in Business Administration is a terminal professional degree, like the PhD or the Doctors of Philosophy degree is a terminal academic degree. So essentially, in order to go teach, you need to have that degree, at least at US universities. So Master's in Business Administration is a terminal professional degree. The expectation, unwritten expectation, is that you finish this degree and then you enter the workplace, because ultimately you want to be climbing the ladder in a management administrative position, right? You want to vertically climb the ladder. It's traditionally offered as a full-time 2-year degree program. And there are other offerings, and maybe Mike can comment on this towards the end, because in a former incarnation, I should say, he was employed at one of the US universities that did offer a 1-year MBA. So he could potentially comment on that. But there might be other offerings like a 1-year MBA or an executive MBA, part-time, online, or hybrid. Keep in mind, for executive MBA, I know some people who are in this session, if I've already had interactions with you via email, and if you've had a lot of years of work experience, over 10 years, then I'm sorry, if you've had less than 10 years of work experience, you would not necessarily qualify for the executive MBA. So exec MBA is more for people with a lot of work ex who just want like a refresher course. But otherwise, typically, the MBA program is for 2 years at most US universities. There are some exceptions, like I did mention earlier. Then it requires work experience, but depending on the curriculum, again, there might be a stipulation as to what would be the minimum work experience that would be required. Some schools might state that you need to have a minimum of 3 or 5 years, and some others, like Syracuse, will not necessarily give you a required minimum, but we address your concern based on a case-by-case understanding of your work ex and your trajectory as to where you want to go with your career. So we can help you then decide whether you would be suited for the MBA degree or whether you would be better suited for the specialized master's degree. So with the MBA, continuing with that, there is some level of practical experience involved, built into the curriculum. So it would be with an internship or with experiential learning component. And typically the people who come into the MBA program are already in the workforce and looking at either advancing in their career or pivoting, right, switching careers, and therefore are coming into an MBA. On the flip side, specialized master's programs were more common in Europe, recently introduced into the US environment, recent as in like at least 20, 25 years ago. So they're shorter in duration, but more intense. And typically for the specialized master's degrees, you do not require prior work experience. Does that mean that if you have work experience, it's going to be a negative? No, it's not. But if you don't have work experience, then don't panic that you don't have work experience. There's no stipulation that you should have any work X. It may or may not include summer internship opportunities, but it does provide for depth of study in a particular area to prepare candidates for the job market. And so what you want to understand primarily is the major difference, or the biggest difference in simplistic terms, between the MBA and the MS is that the MBA gives you a breadth of knowledge and understanding across fields of business, with possibility to specialize in one particular area, whereas the MS degree is more specialized knowledge and potentially one or two aspects of the general operations of business that it targets. Mike, do you want to comment on the one-year MBA option?
I can, yeah. So basically, one of the biggest things with the full-time MBA is always getting that internship, right? And getting that ability to get some work experience while you're in the program. That's usually, either different than what you've already done, maybe just by role or by responsibility, but also sometimes it's a totally different industry. Some people want to really flip-flop and change their pre-MBA experience and go into something totally different post-MBA. So the internship seems to be something where the one-year MBAs, you have to look for that, because if that's going to be important for you, if you're a career switcher, that may rule out a one-year program at a lot of schools. Some do offer either experiential learning or they have an internship, pre-program. But if that's not important, if you're just looking to kind of progress in your current career, a one-year MBA is a great way to kind of detach from your job, get that experience, get that curriculum done in a one-year quick 12-month format, and then jump right back into the market. And for some folks too, your employer may actually let you do that for a year and you still retain your role when you get back, either at the same position or at a higher level position with a promotion. So yeah, lots of great options out there. One other caveat, I guess, with the timing of this session being in the time frame of society that we're in, 2022, a lot of these program types are so blended right now because schools have lots of new policies, COVID restrictions that have just been lifted now. So read those websites when you're comparing and contrasting program types, and make sure you understand what a hybrid program really is, what an on-campus full-time really is, and make sure you're reading through any kind of COVID policy changes that may have happened to those programs over the last 2 years, because a lot of those are probably being lifted now. And so those on-campus programs that may have been online last year are back in person on campus. So,
Yep.
but yeah.
Okay, you can move to the next one.
Sure.
Okay, so choosing the right program. So just piggybacking off of what Mike just said, you want to identify the degree path that you want to pursue, understand whether a one-year MBA or a two-year MBA is better for you. If you have quite a bit of work experience and then you just need a quick refresher for a one-year MBA, that might work. But if you are coming in with relatively lesser work experience, or what we call an early career professional, then using the two-year MBA as a foundation for not only getting the content knowledge and the discipline in the discipline that you're interested in, but also utilizing that internship option and the experiential learning opportunities would work really well. So some business programs are STEM designated, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, now some MBA programs are STEM designated as well, and Whitman's is one of them. One size does not fit all. So again, please remember, this is very important. You don't want to choose a particular program because the friend you spoke with did the same program, right? Your friend's direction might be different in career aspirations, and their interests would be different. So even though you could be similar in many ways, treat yourself as an individual and choose the right one for you, even if it means deviating from your friend's pathway, right? So understand the purpose of the advanced degree. Look at what skill sets and training that you have that you want to capitalize on. And so then you need to understand whether the advanced degree that you're choosing is actually going to add value to what you already have, or is it going to basically just be a repetition of what you already did? If it's going to be a repetition, then why do you have to pay, you know, all this money to come in for an advanced degree program and essentially not gain much more from it, which you can do in other ways, right? So think about these kinds of things and determine the area of interest that you want, because within the specialized masters, you obviously have to pick the specialized area. Within the MBA, you have to pick a specialization, even though the rest of it is general management, right? So review the content beyond rankings. I cannot state that enough, because sometimes you will potentially miss out on something that resonates very well with you because it's not listed in the rankings. And understand the ranking methodologies. Like every ranking methodology is different. So as long as you understand that methodology and recognize based on what factors the ranking is compiled, then that'll help you figure out whether, you know, it resonates with your utmost requirements and deeper set of values. And so you could use that as a springboard, as a starting point, but don't rely entirely only on that. And of course, reach out to university representatives, which is another reason why we're doing this session, right? So I may not be able to meet each one of you separately, but at least in this way to get to know what people are interested in and if I can assist in helping you make a decision. Okay, so moving on. These are the programs that are available at the Whitman School of Management. Is the generic email address, I'm sorry, not email address, website address for the MS programs and the MBA programs. And now we'll move forward to discussing them in a little more detail. So one more. So this is the MBA full-time program overview, right? So ours is a traditional 2-year on campus in residence in Syracuse MBA program. It requires 54 credits. You're going to do 36 credits, which are general management credits, and there are 18 credits, which will be the specialization credits. So in the right column, you have the list of specializations that we offer. So accounting, business analytics, entrepreneurship, finance, marketing management, real estate, supply chain management. You can choose any one specialization and complete 18 credits in just that one specialization. Or you could choose more than one specialization and you could complete a combination. Now, who decides what that combination should be? That would be you, the candidate. We don't decide for you. The only thing we would do is help guide you towards the courses that you would need to complete, which would count towards the specialization. So for example, if you want to do a combination, I'm trying to think, what are some combinations that students have completed? I've had a student from Nicaragua who initially came into the program wanting to do entrepreneurship and decided midway of the first semester, he's going to add a second specialization in finance. Now, that's an interesting combination. That's not very common. Usually the common combination would be entrepreneurship and marketing management. But there's nothing stopping you from building a completely different type of a combination based on your interest and where you see that taking you in the types of jobs or career options that you're targeting. Now, up to 9 credits are also allowed from other graduate programs on campus. So what do I mean by that? So let's say, for example, you choose one specialization. So for a specialization, you need to have a minimum of 9 credits. And If you're coming from an engineering background and you're interested in taking some courses at the graduate level in the School of Engineering, you can take up to 9 credits from there, even if it's not within the business school, because as long as you have one specialization within the business school. So it would just be considered as electives that you're taking and fulfilling the remaining 9 credits to match the 18. So you don't have to remember each of these things right now word to word, because when you come into the program, you will have an academic advisor to work with, and he or she will guide you in that process. And so this is just to give you a general understanding of how this works. This last thing that I want to cover here is the WIRE initiative, which is a very recent initiative that was launched called the Whitman Industry Readiness and Excellence Initiative. So what this entails is an opportunity for students to choose to complete a business certification in whatever area that you think you want to earn the certification. So for example, the school already provides you access to complete an Excel certification. We subscribe to Microsoft Excel for it, and we have it loaded onto all of the computers in the lab that students who are current students in the program will have access to. So you can learn the modules, and you can take the certification exam, and you don't have to pay for it at all, because we pay for the cost. But the WIRE initiative allows students to identify other certification programs that they want to go get a certification in. I don't know, as an example, I'm just throwing out something with a Google Analytics certificate for which you would actually have to pay. You could fill that form out and show that this is a certification you would need, and this is your specialization, fill out your information, and the school will pay for it for you to take the exam, right? So what this does is, while the school has identified certain certifications for students to pursue, or that they might be interested in, it opens it up for you to come up with other certifications that potentially we may not be aware of, but you think would be useful, something very, very specific to your field of study. So we welcome the opportunity to allow you to pursue that while we take the financial challenge out of it and offset the costs. Moving on. Okay, so here's an application checklist. Just some things for you too, because I did see some messages pop up in the chat box that people are interested in the full-time MBA. So there is an online application. My apologies, it is 8 pages long. So take some time, maybe after dinner every night, take like 2 hours set aside and fill it out in batches if you so wish. But it is 8 pages long. Be careful how you go through the application. It could get tedious, right? There is opportunity to request an application fee waiver code. My apologies, I did not input it onto the slide. Oh yeah, I do have it here, $75 application fee, but what I did not input on this presentation is how to request it. And I'll give you the instructions towards the end. But there is opportunity to request a fee waiver code. There is an application essay. There is a business resume that you would have to upload. 2 letters of recommendation are required. If you have already had professional work experience, we would like to see the letters of recommendation from your professional network. If you are a current student finishing up your undergraduate degree, or has just recently finished up your undergraduate degree, then yes, we will accept letters from your faculty. Unofficial copies of your transcripts if you do not meet degree equivalency requirements to match the 4-year degree equivalent of a US degree, you would benefit from submitting a credential evaluation. There is an admissions interview only on a case-by-case basis. So it's not mandatory. So if you don't get an interview call, don't be disappointed. Official score reports for GMAT or GRE exam, there might be waivers available. They're limited, but they are based on, again, a case-by-case review of an individual's candidacy. So I would suggest you schedule a meeting with me and we can go over your particular candidacy. And the English proficiency exam for students from countries that are not officially considered as native English speaking countries, you would have to submit an English proficiency test score from the TOEFL, IELTS, PT, academic, or Duolingo. Details are available at this link that I've provided you with the application checklist for every program. When you go into the admissions page, there is an application checklist. So maybe we could open that up towards the end. So scholarship information, its merit scholarships are available to all admitted students. There is no separate application required to request a scholarship. It is automatic consideration, whether it's for the MBA or the specialized master's degrees. There is no separate application deadline. We will review your candidacy for admission as well as for scholarship. For MBA, the minimum scholarship award begins at $20,000 US. That is if you meet just basic requirements for the MBA candidacy. Okay, moving on. We'll go to the MS degrees, and this gives you the links for the specialized master's degree. So as I mentioned in a previous slide, it's professional accounting, business analytics, entrepreneurship, emerging enterprises, finance, marketing, and supply chain management. So real estate, which is available as a specialization within the MBA, is not offered as a separate standalone MS degree, but is available as a specialty focus area under MS and finance, right? So you would basically do the MS and finance degree with a specialty focus in real estate. Okay, so let's move on. So the full-time MS program. So this is slightly different. So remember what I said earlier, the specialized master's degrees are more focused for depth, right, in a specialized area. So therefore, the number of credits that you have to take also gets truncated. And because of that, the time also gets truncated. So there are actually different pathways, 3 flexible pathways for you to complete our MS degrees. Now remember, this is specific to the Whitman School of Management at SU. So our master's degrees are 30 credits, specialized masters, except for the specialized masters in business analytics, which is 36 credits for completion. So all others are only 30 credits. Now you can complete them in 3 flexible pathways, as in if it's a 30 credit program, you can complete in typically 1 year, 9 months, which I don't recommend for international students, but domestics, it might be possible because it's a heavy load, right? You're taking 15 credits a semester. That's no joke. I would like for you to have a life. I would like for you to enjoy the campus, enjoy other student activities to become part of. I would like for you to enjoy the explore the neighborhood, go explore the Adirondacks, and engage in other activities outside of the classroom as well. Be a student, for instance. So 30 credits in nine months is a little tough. So the second option for 30 credit program would be 16 months, which is usually favorable to international students because you spend 1 year, 2 semesters with 9 credits each. You would do a summer internship for 3 credits, and then you would come back and do the remainder 9 credits, right? Like, so did I do the math right? 27 credits and 3 credits, 30 credits, okay? With 36 credits, the minimum time frame would be 16 months, whether you choose to do an internship or not do an internship. And then the second option would be 21 months, which is you're almost doing a 2-year degree program, not counting the summer, right? Again, you don't have to decide at the time of application which pathway you want to go through. You can come into the program during orientation. All of that will be covered again. And then your academic advisor, you will have individual meetings with your academic advisor, and you can decide at that time based on your profile, your candidacy, your, not candidacy, your career aspiration and trajectory, which pathway would be a better fit for you. There is opportunity, like I said, to pursue a summer internship for credit. There are some students who choose not to do that, and potentially this is more common for those who come into entrepreneurship. They might, instead of pursuing an internship, try to use the summer to build their business plan idea. So take it from conception to potentially a lot more clarified conception, if you will, or to build a strategy for it, and then to look for possibility in how they can actually implement it and execute it, what they would need to do. So in fine-tuning a business idea, working with a faculty member, so that's possible too. So 4 programs that I've listed here for STEM designation: business analytics, finance, marketing, and supply chain management. Again, if you go to that link on the website, it will take you to the generic MS experience. And over there, you can find links to all of our MS degree programs. The rest of the application checklist for the MS degree programs remains pretty much the same as the MBA, which is, again, you have to do the 8 pages online application. You do have opportunity to request an application fee waiver code. And the only difference, can we actually switch back to the app checklist real quick? Backwards. There we go. So here, you would have pretty much the application essay, you would have the business resume, 2 letters of recommendation, unofficial copies of transcripts. You can request a fee waiver code. Admissions interview will, again, potentially not be needed, but instead of the admissions interview, what you have is a video component that you have to complete for when you apply to the MS program. So the video component is part of the application. You will have 5 minutes to answer 3 questions via video. You will have those 3 questions available to you ahead of time, and you can practice before you launch the player and record yourself. And then for the fall 22 application round or application cohort, we are not requiring the GMAT or the GRE exam if you're applying for the specialized master's degree. For the MBA, like I've indicated here, waivers are available, but they're limited. They're on a case-by-case review. But for MS students or applicants, it's not required, but an English proficiency exam score will be required if you're not from an English-speaking country. And those details are, again, on the particular program's application checklist. So let's move on. And I am done with my portion of the presentation. So there's my email address that's listed over there, which I think we can throw into the chat box as well. And if Mike, you can throw the calendar link. So I will provide you access to my calendar. You can request a meeting, and you can send me a resume along with what might be the reason for the meeting, right? So that I have a moment to prepare before the meeting. Sometimes I do have back-to-back meetings, so my entire day gets filled up. So if I'm moving back to back, I just want to know that I'm prepared for the right meeting. If I do not receive a resume, I will not send you a Zoom meeting link. So you will get multiple reminders about sending the resume prior to the meeting. So please don't take that lightly. It is required. And so it would be helpful if you sent in the resume. So, okay. Questions? I think we can take out the share screen of the PowerPoint now, right?
That's, if you would like, we have
Yes.
I'll put the email in here also, but the Calendly is probably better, Shri, right? To reach you through the Calendly link, right?
Yeah, but then if they have my email, I guess they could just send me the resume. So
perfect. Okay, so
perfect.
I will remove the share screen, but at the same time, there were, I think, 2 questions that came through at least. So I'll start with those, and I'll make sure we can get to those. If folks have additional questions, feel free to put them into either the Q&A or the chat box. We'll make sure we get to as many as possible. One thing with questions I will mention is, I know it's great to get individual questions answered, right? Questions like, how does my particular candidacy look for your program? Save those questions for the Calendly or an email with Shri. Save those for more of like a private session. For the public session, we want to make sure we're answering questions that everybody could have interest in, that'll help the general audience. So if I skip your question, that might be why. It doesn't mean it's a bad question. It just might not be relevant to the entire group. So just want to make sure we set that stage. And with that, the first question that came up, and Shri, this is something we actually discussed when we were talking about, doing this session. Monroe asked, what do you look for in prospective students for the MS programs? And I guess one thing I can kind of add on to that is, what is the difference of what you're looking for in an MS applicant versus an MBA applicant, if there are any differences? Like, are there certain aspects of the application that you may be looking at a little more closely depending on what program it is?
Okay, so that's a good place to start. So let's start with similarities, right? Like what would be the same for both programs? For instance, both programs will require at least an undergraduate degree. In some cases, people will also have a prior master's degree, which is fine, but at least an undergraduate degree, right? Now, sometimes a question I get related is, does my undergrad degree have to be in a business related field? No. Whether it's for an MBA or whether it's applying for a specialized master's degree, the generic response would be, it is not required from a business field. But here's where the differences begin. When you're applying for a program like accounting or finance, there is a specific vocabulary and terminology that is affiliated with those degrees. So in your undergrad degree program, those introductions and all those initial fundamentals, if you will, of the discipline are introduced to you. So if you're applying for an MS in accounting or an MS in finance, yes, there are prerequisite courses. So therefore, you cannot come with an arts degree without completing the prerequisite courses and come into that program, right? So if you don't have time to complete that, then there might be difficulty for you to complete them during the graduate program. And it's not to say that you cannot learn, but it's to say that based on policy and what is required, you would not be a fit, right? So having said that, in terms of the qualitative aspect of like, okay, when we look at an MBA applicant versus an MS applicant, first thing that comes to mind is in different regions of the world, the programs are provided differently. I know, for instance, in some Asian countries, a student can go right after completing their undergraduate degree, the next available opportunity is just the MBA. But the content they might be covering may not necessarily, it's not in terms of the disciplinary content I'm looking at, but I'm talking more in terms of the professional work experience that is looked at, right? So there may not be any requirement for work experience, but in the US context, if you don't have work experience, what we would prefer to see is, do you have any entrepreneurial experience? Have you been running your own business for the last 2 years while you were an undergrad? No. Well, I just freshly graduated and I'm interested in learning all this and I want to go into an MBA. But why do you need an MBA? Well, my best friend did an MBA after 7 years of working. My uncle runs a business. These are actual examples. These are actual responses I've been given. So don't think I'm making this up, as part of like a random fictional presentation.
I've got them too, yeah.
Right? We've experienced this. My uncle runs a business. I see how well he's doing. I really want to do this. And then the one response which completely flummoxed me, and I didn't know how to react or respond when it was in a public setting and this person said this to me. I just want to make a ton of money and that's why I want the MBA. I didn't know how to respond to that. So that should not be your reason for why you want an MBA. When we're asking you that question, what we are essentially asking you to do is self-introspect and look back on your skill sets and also your interests. You know yourself best. So if you have, for example, a very quantitative heavy brain, right? You lean towards more quantitative analytical kind of thinking. Okay, I enjoy this. I don't do this just because it's a chore or because I have to graduate, I have to take this class. No, I really enjoy it. So that means you're wired for it and therefore it comes to you naturally in a way. Then going into a quantitative discipline would probably come naturally to you. Could you go into finance? Sure. Could you go into business analytics? Sure. Which degree are you qualified for? That's the issue. Coming into an MBA with no work experience, no GMAT score, nothing that helps us see outside of your transcript what you want to do, no leadership opportunities, no experience in your background that shows that you've taken initiative in something, it's a little dicey for us to put you into an MBA program, isn't it? Because we don't have any way of understanding what you could be capable of, but you would be a fantastic fit to come into the specialized master's program because you want to learn this analytical component, you want to learn the academic discipline, and therefore you would be an easy fit into that program. Does that mean you should never ever get the MBA? No, it just means you want to move out of thinking, I have graduated from one classroom now with my undergraduate degree, and I'm going to jump into the next classroom, which will then get me a final degree. No, an MBA requires you to have some real world experience so that you can come into the classroom, you can bring your perspectives, you can recognize what your shortcomings and strengths are that you discovered when you were 2 years in the field, learning, gaining some work X outside of being an intern. Remember, being an intern, you don't have the responsibility of a paycheck. So you will not be making policy decisions. You will not be making project decisions. You will be doing what you're told. And your project manager, your supervisor will take the hit for any mistakes that you commit as an intern. They will never, ever put an intern down. They will always be very favorable to an intern. So you can learn a lot of things being an intern, but an internship does not constitute or substitute for full-time professional work experience, because it also comes with a level of stress, right? That is not measured in quantitative numbers. It's sort of like, Mike and I are familiar very much with this. Oh, we're not meeting our target this year. What's going to happen? How do we explain this? Why haven't we received applications, as an example? Why is nobody interested in this program, right? We have to give those explanations. As an intern, nobody's going to ask you those questions. So one thing we would look for, that's why we look for work experience for MBA. If you've had even 1 year, 1.5 years, at least, depending on the program you're applying for. So at Syracuse, at least a year, 1.5 years would do you well. But if you have more, even better. Any kind of self-motivated activities that you've engaged in out of your own, like, of course, entrepreneurial ventures will be taken into account. So if you've not had professional, traditional full-time work experience, then you could take, we would take entrepreneurial experience into account. There is also opportunity for you to demonstrate, well, while I was a student, I had multiple internships, even though it wasn't required for my curriculum. But what were those internships? Oh, they were high-profile internships where I actually did work. So it wasn't just that I shadowed somebody to learn things, but I was entrusted with a responsibility to build these financial modeling reports, or like to, forecast, or to build a marketing analytics report for this particular product campaign. And I worked on this and it was later implemented. So something that helps us see those kinds of things, right? To help us understand what type of a candidate you are. So I think that sort of gives a general overview.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things where sometimes the conversations that you can have with admissions prior to applying can sometimes help you slot into one of those types of programs. Because there are some people who probably are hearing what you're saying and thinking, I'm kind of in between. I kind of have work experience, or people that may have worked full time while they were going to school full time, or non-traditional students. Like, there's a lot of special cases. So it's great, folks like Shri and there's folks like her at other schools. You can have those conversations. You don't have to just blindly apply. Admissions is here to help. I think that's always
we're nice people. I'm friendly.
We're all just folks, right? So I think that's something that any admissions representative I've ever met has always wanted us to get that across, is everyone thinks they're gatekeepers and they want everybody out of their programs. They're looking for reasons to admit, not looking for reasons to deny. That is a thing I always hear from everybody we deal with. So keep that in mind and have those conversations ahead of time so you can properly put your application together.
The only other thing I would add to that is, while we're looking to admit, also keep in mind, sometimes you come across as a student, you're looking at so many different websites and you're looking at all these different types of programs. You may not understand the nuances of our particular program. So what we are looking for is to find the right fit program for you. So you may have thought one program is a fit for you, but we then try to show you how that's not really going to get you where you need to go. And I think Coyote is in this presentation and just popped it on the chat. And he's an example of that. He had initially come in thinking he wants to apply for MS in supply chain management. And then we had a conversation, and it's now changed his idea, and he's actually going into MS in entrepreneurship, and had a meeting with a professor. So Coyote, I didn't ask your permission to share that story, but I hope you don't mind. It's a very uplifting story, and it's actually, it's a feel-good story for me too, that, oh wow, I did make a difference. So other questions?
Yeah, so speaking of like when to apply, right? So we do have a few folks asking about when the next deadlines are.
So March 15th is the next one. If you miss March 15th, then you can do April 15th. At this time, I cannot say that the deadline will be extended, but given how the pandemic has, changed everybody's routines, I should say, I wouldn't be surprised if we decide to extend one more round, but don't be in the hopes, oh, it'll get extended to May, and then it doesn't happen. So if it's also, keep in mind, for us at Syracuse, it is more of a rolling deadline. So if you miss submitting exactly on March 15th, don't think that that application door is going to close and you cannot submit, you'll get dinged. It's okay. If you're ready on March 17th, then submit on March 17th. I will highlight here though, just as an experience, just as an additional sort of info for that. As soon as you hit submit at your end, please keep in mind, we don't get the application right away. It goes to another department.
Right.
I have a funny story here. I had a student who contacted one of my colleagues and sent a message and said, I haven't heard anything. I submitted the application. I haven't heard back. So our first reaction when we see a message like that is, oh my God, is there a glitch in the system? Where is the glitch? What has happened? We need to fix this, right? That's what we're looking at. And then it turns out, when my colleague was addressing that question, he could not see anything in our database. We couldn't understand what's happening. And he asked, when did you submit the application? And the response was, well, about 10 minutes ago. So you will not see it right away. In your case, it says submit, your application has been submitted. But until we get it, it takes at least 5 business days, because it goes through processing. Your letters of recommendation are attached to it and everything. And the final thing comes to us at least 5 business days later. Processing time for a decision after your application is considered complete will at least be 3 weeks.
That's good to know. And then also there was a second kind of follow-up to that of like, what's the difference between each of the rounds? And it sounds like there's more blended.
Oh, each of the rounds, the difference is like, if one is not prepared for the first round, then, we don't want to say that's the only round available and you can never apply until next year. But also sometimes students, even though the test is optional, would like to take the test. I checked your calendar, no dates available. I'll address that in a second. But the application rounds, as a student may not get a test application date, like somebody didn't get a calendar date for a meeting with me. It's like, so you would not get a test date in time for the application. So it's just to allow and accommodate for that spread over time. But it also gives you like at least something to shoot for, right? So it's not just ad hoc, like, well, I'll submit whenever I have the mood for it. No, here's a timeline. How about you work within this timeline? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Funding is popping up a few different ways here. But the more simpler way to answer funding, I guess, is, do you offer at Whitman the opportunity for teaching assistantships, research assistantships, and are there only certain programs that offer those opportunities, or is it across the board?
So at Whitman, what we offer, first of all, we offer merit-based scholarships, right, for all our programs, MBA as well as specialized masters. For specialized masters, mostly partial funding. For MBA, rare cases, full funding. But everybody gets considered for scholarship. With respect to assistantships, we don't do assistantships in the traditional sense. We offer more of what's called studentships because they are taxable, right? So and that depends on whether faculty members have funding available to them to actually take on a student as an assistant, like a graduate assistant, but not in the traditional sense of what a graduate assistantship entails, because that would entail like giving you a stipend and like, paying for your health insurance and all of those things. We don't do it like that. What we do is like an hourly rate that you are paid if you're assisting a professor, for instance, to, help with grading or help them with some lit review as they're preparing for a project, or do, some other project related work. So that depends on whether a faculty member has funding available, monies available towards the latter half of the semester after students have already come into the program, not at this stage, right? And also keep in mind, first semester, you may not be the person that they are tapping into because they want somebody to take their class before you can become, a grader for their class, right? So it's understandable. But the other way school does assist is like on-campus jobs. Some of those jobs might be at Whitman departments, so you can look into that.
That makes sense. And there's other opportunities to do exactly like on-campus jobs, or even just like jobs in the community. You want to pick up some extra money. Sometimes you can maybe do some part-time or tutoring services. Like there's other things that happen. Syracuse is a large
caveat
university.
for international students, though. If this is your first time ever coming into the US, you have to be a student for at least 1 year before you do anything off campus. So I have to constantly keep harping about that because I don't want anyone to like, I had a conversation with a student a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed like the student was very surprised because their understanding of coming to the US to study was that, yeah, I can go to school and I can like, pick up a job like whenever I want and go. No, you can't, which is why it's required for you to complete the 2 semesters before you can do a summer internship elsewhere. Otherwise, you are restricted to campus, but there are opportunities on campus.
Yeah, and Whitman is a part of a large university of Syracuse, so there's a lot of opportunities across campus, I'm sure. Another question that is coming through, and this is more, I guess, just to understand what these programs are about, is do you need to have any background in research to then go into, I guess I'll just open it up to any of the MBA programs, and I can even probably answer that and just say no. Yeah. I mean, these are not research degrees. Usually the research degrees in graduate management education would be those doctorate level degrees, which even for a lot of those, and I'm not going to speak for Syracuse, but a lot of the other programs, you don't necessarily have to have a full-on research background to get into those either, because there's some caveats there. But for this conversation, for master's level degrees, there's no research needed to enter the programs or post-program. And that question was kind of posed both sides. Do you have to then complete research at the back end of the program?
Well, complete the research during the program would only come into play if your target is to go into a PhD program right after.
Yes.
So in that sense, yes. But if you're planning to graduate and get a job, then no, not necessarily research. Again, caveat, very specific, limited folks would possibly say, well, I want to do a master's in supply chain management, but I specifically want to understand how this supply chain issue could be affected in the pharmaceutical industry. And I want to ultimately get into an R&D situation with them, but only with relation to supply chain. I'm just throwing it out as an example, right? Don't take my word for any curriculum content. I am not a business degree holder. I have a PhD in a non-business field, but yeah.
And transitioning over to testing, right? So GMAT, GRE,
everybody loves that, don't they?
We love those questions. So I'll ask 2 questions here. I'll combine 2 different ones that we've had. One is if there's a brief way to do this, and if not, obviously we'll point people back to the application pages. This is all explained on the website. But for this session today, do you have minimum scores that you're looking for any of the programs? And then the second question would be to qualify for waivers. Is there a process for that, or what are you looking for people who may qualify?
Okay, so with respect to the waivers for the GMAT or the GRE, for specialized master's degrees, none of the degrees require the GMAT or the GRE. If they're recommended, they're not required. If you don't have it, then that's fine, you can still apply. But if you do have it, your recommended minimum is 600. So if you're at a 400, don't submit your score. Right? Because once your score is submitted, we have to take it into account, even if it's not required, but you sent us your score. So then we will take it into account. We will send it to the committee for review. And then a question arises, well, why are we looking at a candidate who has not met our minimum? Right? So keep that in mind. For GMAT waivers for MBA applicants, it would really depend on a case-by-case review. If you have less than 5 years, I would not recommend that you will receive a GMAT waiver. You will potentially be asked to submit a score. If you submit a GRE test score, we will convert it to the GMAT equivalent using the ETS comparison tool. Again, it should come close to a 600, but it's not the only thing we take into account. We also look at your work experience. So if you have 3 years of work experience, you have a score of 620 on the GMAT, and then your transcripts are taken into account, your letters of recommendation, everything, and then your candidacy admissions decision is made and your scholarship award is decided.
There you go. And as we're getting to the bottom of the hour, I just want to make sure I recognize that we are nearing this hour mark. So I want to be respectful of folks' time who joined us and Shree's time as well. But I do want to end on an important question here, which is the Calendly link. We do have some folks saying there's no more appointments. So how can we get folks to be able to follow up, ask their questions, and be able to reach you? What happens there?
Okay. All right. So I didn't plan this, so don't think I deliberately gave you the link and blocked it on my calendar and then just put it out there. But
we
I'll
just
give
said
you,
you're easy to reach and you want to
I
help
know.
people. It's like, but you can't reach.
Then it's
so.
not. So I will also give you, I'm posting in the chat box, I will give you a link, which is a different link. So the Calendly link that was initially posted is to my personal calendar, right? My direct calendar. My direct calendar, the availability opens up only 10 days prior. So if you're seeing that it's blocked out right now, it's because for the next 10 days, you won't see availability right now. Right? I have travel coming up next week. So that's probably a reason why as well. So as the days go on, so maybe if you check on Monday or Tuesday, you will see some stuff coming up. Again, with my calendar, the dates are sort of blocked with students can make appointments only Tuesday to Thursday. Because at some point I need time to respond to all the emails that you're sending me, right? I can't just be meeting with you. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, if you can't meet with me, that's fine. You can reference this webinar. I do have 2 lovely colleagues who I think would appreciate getting a message as well. So I will throw in the chat box here a Calendly link for them. So WSM team, and you will be surprised, you'll probably go in here and you'll end up on my calendar, which is fine. That's how it works, right? The round robin gives it to whoever is available. So if I'm particularly not available after this webinar, you can, go through that link. If you want to speak with me specifically, you have my email address, send me a resume, and I will open something up if it's a quick question that I can meet with you. And sometimes I have cancellations, right? So if I have cancellations, the system will not let you schedule a meeting 4 hours prior to the meeting time you want. So in that kind of a situation, I have a cancellation, I'm happy to connect and send you, a message and say, hey, I have availability at this time, can you meet? I'm very particular, more than my colleagues. If I do not receive a resume, I will not send you a meeting link. And you have to understand why. So I think there were some questions which I saw pop up. Adrian's is one of them. And I had met with Adrian earlier, so I'll use his example, but I think there were some other questions in regards to degree equivalency. I need to understand with your resume whether you meet degree equivalency requirements. Adrian, I'm going to use your example, if that's okay. So he's from Germany, has a bachelor's degree, which is 3.5 years. In between, not 3 years, which is most common in India. It's not in other Commonwealth locations. He has 3.5. It's not 4 years, which is common in the US, North America. So smack in the middle. Yes, we will need a credential evaluation. because we cannot make the determination looking at the number of credits on your transcript that this will be equivalent. We need an accreditation body that says that, so that when your stuff, the universities get evaluated and audited all the time without warning. So we want to make sure that when such an audit comes up and your file gets pulled out for whatever reason randomly, that it doesn't come up as like, how did you accept this, with no official documentation from an accreditation body, right? So yes, you will, in your case, Adrian, yes, we will need a WES evaluation. And so that's the other reason why we request the resume, to understand what your degree is. If it's a quick question, quickly, that I see some degrees that I do recognize, I know it's only 3 years, I know you will need to do additional stuff, I can send it to you on email very quick or explain to you quickly. If it's not, then it will be a point of starting the discussion, right, in the conversation. And then it's also important to see the resume so that we understand clearly what your background is. You're asking me for a GMAT waiver, 10 years or 15 years of work experience, but you have one bullet listed for each title that you held. That doesn't give me a lot of information. So maybe a conversation started to say how you need to rework your resume, right? So I went a little over, but I hope that addresses some related queries.
No, it's
that
good.
came up with
And I
that.
think it shows that depth of like any questions that we didn't get to today. You know, we do apologize, but some questions are better for those kinds of one-on-one conversations. And Shri will answer your questions one-on-one.
Yes.
Some of the stuff is just difficult to answer in this format. So go to those links, send an email to Shri, send your resume out, make sure you can schedule those appointments. And if you really want to get on Shri's calendar directly on her calendar, just check back in a couple of days, because then as the next 10-day window opens up, you know, there may be some additional appointments later in the month or into April. So with that, you know, I want to thank all the attendees who joined us today and spent time to hang out with us and hopefully learn some great information about MBA programs, specialized master's programs, the Whitman School of Management, all things that we've discussed. Shri, I want to thank you for hosting and presenting and providing all this information to our guests today. And for those that want to check out and do some more things, check out the websites that we've provided today. Go over to Whitman. Hopefully have some applications coming your way, Shri. And
they better.
New
So for those,
Syracuse orange sitting in the classroom.
That is correct.
I can't say orange men or women anymore. Orange, Syracuse orange.
That is correct. So this is the Whitman building, so that you see behind me, and that's where you will all be studying when you come in. And if you understand this camaraderie between Mike and I that you're seeing, we used to travel together for recruitment events. We are best friends, and so you know I can pull his leg and I can say he needs to bring me more such sessions if you guys think it's useful. So you should send him a message and say, yes, make her come and do other sessions. And then, you know, I think one of the good conversations we had prior to deciding the session topic was really trying to utilize the time where we could both sort of bring it as an interactive platform to share from our own experiences and not just talk about, you know, it's boring even for me. Don't tell anybody. If I just say, here's the programs we offer, here's a session, here's an application checklist. I'm not very excited about that. I didn't think you would be either. So I hope this type of a session was useful and helpful for you. So I really appreciate meeting all of you, and thank you for taking the time for coming today. And those of you who I recognize in the names, the apps better be coming in soon. Otherwise, you'll get a nasty email from me saying, hello, where's my application? So thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
All right.
And
thanks again,
thank
everyone,
you,
for joining. And we will be sending you this video link very soon. So we'll see you again then.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.